Holy City Center Radio is episode 315, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, November 18th, 2024. Hey everyone, it's another week. I hope you had an awesome weekend and things are going to be amazing for you in the week ahead. We're getting closer and closer to Thanksgiving. I will actually be flying back to Connecticut this week to stay with my family. I'll have a nice long visit with them. I mean, it's never long enough, of course, but thankfully this isn't just a fly in, stay for a couple days, fly out, able to spend a good amount of time. So I'm very much looking forward to that, seeing them and just kind of relaxing because, when you're not in Charleston, you're just hanging out with your family, laying low. We'll certainly do some fun things, and I'll let you know about some of those later. And keep you updated. But, it's just a little bit more relaxed when I'm hanging out with family. Even not like my life is insanely busy and hectic as far as leaving my home all the time, always doing work. But you know how it is. It just feels like when you're back home, especially near, house you grew up in, he just feels very cozy and relaxing. So looking forward to that and seeing my family. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet. Like I said, always busy doing work. And when I'm not working, I'm not doing anything very exciting for you guys to be jealous of. I did go see Sarah Silverman last week. I forgot to mention that. That was a lot of fun. Great show. But otherwise, just kind of, play video games, read, watch TV, and nothing very exciting to pass on. So, but I will be looking forward to sharing some stories about traveling back to Connecticut for the holidays. Probably, I'm assuming we'll be doing the same around Christmas time. Although, that there's, I am planning on it and fully expect it, but you never know. Something weird could happen. Flights could all of a sudden become $1,000 for no reason. But so 2 quick trips, I'm looking forward to for sure. Quick in terms of being, a month-ish apart. Hopefully Christmas, I'll have a good amount of time to hang out at home as well. Anyway, I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seat about my travel plans, so I won't bore you with those anymore. We've got some things to get you updated on this show. I will say the first story I think is interesting because it relates to Murdaugh and the Murdaugh murders and financial crimes, but at the back half stories are, as you can tell from the show title, it's all sorts of goofiness going on with animals in this state. And it'll be fun to chat about those. But first, like I said, we got an update on a Murdaugh-related court case. So without any further delay, let's get into it. A court has overturned the conviction and sentence of a man that was accused of conspiring with Alec Murdaugh to commit fraud. That man is Russell Laffitte. You may remember, obviously Alec Murdaugh's case has got the big headlines, but Laffitte was also convicted as being an accomplice with some of those financial crimes. He ultimately appealed his convictions for bank and wire fraud, citing the removal and replacement of 2 jurors who are implied to have disagreed with his guilty verdict. Laffitte, through his attorneys, claimed that this was cause for the courts to vacate his sentence and grant him a new trial. His appeals case was argued in September, and then this past Thursday, the court ruled in Laffitte's favor. Back in 2022, a jury convicted Laffitte of helping Murdaugh steal around $2 million in legal settlements, and he was sentenced for those crimes. Judge Richard Gergel sat at the bench for the trial and sentenced Laffitte to 7 years in prison in order that he pay $3.5 million in restitution. That happened in August of 2023. Now, the appellate court determined that during his trial, the removal of 2 jurors was mishandled as Judge Gergel made the decision unilaterally and privately, accepting 1 juror's request to be removed during a one-on-one interaction and failing to allow the defense to object, which, he also removed another juror who said they needed medication. So both jurors at some point indicated to the judge that they felt as though the other jurors disagreed with their vote and that they were being pressured to change it. So yes, one of the jurors did mention something about needing antibiotics for whatever, and said, because the deliberations were taking so long, they needed to take this medication and asked to be removed. But in addition to that, they did say that they also were feeling pressured, to side with everybody else. So Judge Gergel made the decision. Again, this was privately and on his own. He made a decision to excuse both jurors and then return to the courtroom to let them know alternatives would go in, or alternates rather would go in. The defense later objected to the entire process, indicating that pressure and decisions the jurors noted should have meant a hung jury, since their notes insinuated they were not convinced of Laffitte's guilt. So basically, in a nutshell, two jurors were saying in different ways that they felt that they were being pressured. They didn't feel Laffitte was guilty, and they felt that their other jurors were really, coming at them and trying to get them to change so that they could get a decision and get out of there. So because the judge didn't let the defense, object to these measures, they later did when they found out the overturning of the conviction and sentence. So, just it always blows my mind when little things like this happen in court cases. You'll sometimes see these on Dateline episodes or wherever, where someone is clearly guilty, or at least seems to be in your mind. Obviously you're at the mercy of a TV show with editing, and you're not actually in the courtroom, but certainly seems like they're guilty of something, and then are found guilty, but then there's some weird technicality thing that comes out. Now, it seems like if things were handled appropriately, this might have been a hung jury and it shouldn't have gotten to the conviction. And that's a whole other thing. But it's always weird to me when one little tiny thing will just throw everything for a loop. And so that's what happened here. Now, a timeline for the new trial has not yet been determined. So yes, that's correct. Just because this was vacated, that doesn't mean that Laffitte's not going to go back to trial. Obviously, he and his team, I'm sure, are happy that this has been vacated, but they're going to have to go through the process again. And of course, their hope would be for either another hung jury, which this one sounds like would have been, or actually being found not guilty. So we'll see what ultimately ends up happening there. Now, he's still charged with all 6 federal counts of bank and wire fraud and misappropriating funds, as I just mentioned. However, this time around, Laffitte will qualify for bond ahead of any future hearing. So that's another plus for him, whereas in the past he was not. So that's the latest there. Obviously, I'll keep you posted whenever this happens to go back to trial, assuming it does. And I would imagine they're not just going to let this go. They're going to definitely bring it back to trial. So I'll be sure to keep you updated. All right, now the animal news. So back to those escape monkeys in Yemisi. It's been more than a week, of course, since 43 monkeys escaped from the Alpha Genesis research facility. And we now know what happened. A caretaker failed to secure the door after feeding the monkeys and cleaning their enclosure. Because the door wasn't secure, that's how they ultimately got out. Now, at this point, they've had. I haven't seen an update in a day or so, but last I saw, there was still a few out there. I think it was like 3 to 5 monkeys were still out, but the rest had been captured. And so, as of this recording, to the best of my knowledge, there's at least some monkeys still on the loose. Now, obviously, seems like kind of a silly and funny story, but it also has kind of shown a spotlight on Alpha Genesis, this lab, where people are also like, okay, yeah, it's kind of funny. Monkeys escaped. But wait, what is this facility? And, a lot of people have a lot of questions about this entire operation. And because of that, there have been some stories that have come out about this company's past and what they currently do. So according to their website, and this is, classic corporate vague talking points, but according to their website, Alpha Genesis provides, quote, non-human primate products and bio research services, end quote. Yeah, it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But ultimately what this company does is they breed monkeys that they then sell to medical facilities and other researchers. So some more background. In 2018, it was reported that Alpha Genesis received a grant of more than $1 million for a multi-year project to use the monkeys as a developmental model for progressive brain disorders, including common forms of dementia. Obviously, there's a large swath of people who don't like that monkeys, or any animals for that matter, are being experimented on or are, being studied, depending on how the study goes, of course. And even those of us who know that a lot of good has come out of experiments in the past, as far as, helping to prevent diseases, making sure medications are can help. And it's that weird balance of, well, we wouldn't have had this good thing for humanity if we didn't do the testing on these animals, but we also don't super love that we're doing that. So it's a complicated issue, of course, for some people. And some in the scientific community would point to how this vital research that involved primates has helped in fighting diseases like AIDS, polio, and even COVID-19. So again, it's this kind of weird thing where you're like, well, that's great that we've got advancements, that's helping humans. Was there another way to do this? Or how many people would have had to die because we didn't do these experiments? It's a very complicated situation. But then adding to this is that people start looking into alpha genesis more, and they have like a pretty long history of having issues. I'll put it that way. Um, so besides people, of course, this was like not just national news, international news about the monkeys escaping. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are raising concerns about animal research facilities in general, but also alpha genesis itself. And like I said, this is not the first time animals have escaped from the facility, which apparently they currently house about 7,000 monkeys. In 2016, 19 monkeys escaped from the same facility, but were returned after about 6 hours. Back in 2014, 26 reportedly escaped and were captured within 2 days. Uh, Documents from federal regulators from previous years have reviewed many other incidents at the facility. One involved a primate escaping while being transported to the medical clinic and then ultimately disappearing into the woods. Another involved two monkeys breaking out of their outdoor chain link enclosure, which reportedly resulted in one monkey being lured back inside and the other dying shortly after being recaptured. In 2017, the Department of Agriculture fined the company more than $12,000, partly due to the failures of containing the animals. And these reports you can find from different sources, including the New York Times and the Associated Press. You can also visit the link in the show notes to see the full story. There's many other incidents, and there are several involving these primates dying for different reasons, and ultimately it seems to come down to, more often than not, human error or not checking on them as frequently as they should. And yeah, they've been fined for these issues. So yes, on the surface, a funny story. A bunch of monkeys escape from a research lab. People are, from their homes cheering them on, like, oh, escape, live in the wild like you should. But it has brought a focus to that company. And as you can see, it's had problems in the past, obviously is having one right now, and has led to a lot of questions about what exactly they do. And has a lot of people discussing animal testing. I'm not going to dive into it any further than that. It's just something that's been in the news because of this situation. And for those of you who didn't know the background of this company, I thought you might find that interesting. So, needless to say, I'm sure other stories may come out about issues with this facility, and I'm sure at least in the short term, there's going to be a lot of eyes on them. For everything from just everyday residents in people in the community up to the government, just making sure that they're doing things the way they're supposed to. But also, I'm sure you might see more protests or discussions about whether they should even be doing the things that they're doing. Will that lead to any changes? I doubt it. Just this is what it is. But it'll be interesting to see how long these kind of like, not protests in the sense people aren't like showing up at the facility, but protests from, behind keyboards and whatnot, and pushing for change. We'll see if there's any sort of movement that comes out of it. But it's not just monkeys that are escaping here in South Carolina. There is also a group of feral emus, as they are described, seen roaming in northern Horry County. So yes, it's actually just a pair. It's not a whole group. It's a pair of emus who are on the loose in northern Horry County. They've been loose for the last 3 months after breaking free of their enclosure. The bird's owner actually posted on like a Facebook group for the Loris community saying, quote, "For everyone that keeps seeing an emu, yes, it is mine. There are two of them out. They got loose 3 months ago. They are feral and not trained like the ones we have at the house." Local law enforcement has already been at my house. We are trying to get a tranquilizer approved so we can bring them home," end quote. He even said something along the lines of, if they were easy to catch, they would have been caught by now, since I think a lot of people are like, how are they still loose for 3 months? These are, I would imagine, a lot easier to spot since they are, emus are like ostriches. They're pretty big birds, unlike these monkeys, which are like 6 to 7 pounds, and also climbing around in trees and such. So apparently, it's not as easy as one would think, according to this person. Now, just like the research facility, this is not the first time emus have been on the loose. Marlborough County residents had a similar incident happened in July. That's the one I remember, when one of the animals was roaming between the cities, or the towns of Clio and Bennettsville for several days, covered about 12 miles. So, again, not the first time that we've had emus on the loose this year alone. All right, so we've got, 3 to 5 monkeys still on the loose in Yemassee, although it seems they're contained onto that property. And we have 2 emus on the loose in the Midlands. So, hey, I don't even know what to actually. I don't even know if Midlands is right. I think I'm conflating it with the next story, but they're loose in Horry County. Forgive me, I forget all the areas of the state. But yeah, so animals on the loose, and we're not quite done. This one's a little bit different, though. This is the story involving the Midlands. Recently, a hunter, and by recently, just earlier this month, November 2nd, a hunter who has only been identified as JM, the initials JM, reported sighting a 7-foot tall creature with long brown hair, ape like face, and long arms. The hunter claims what he saw: a Bigfoot. Yes, that is correct. This hunter was deep in the pine thick forests of the Midlands, as the Post and Courier article describes it. And he apparently came face to face with the legend that is Bigfoot. The sighting occurred outside Pomaria. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Apologies. Which is in Newberry County. It's about 25 miles northwest of Columbia. And it was around daybreak when JM was on his family's hunting lease, and was in the woods. Apparently, deer are plentiful out there. The hunter, who also said he's a police officer, was sitting in a ground blind when he heard a loud, deep-toned grunt and a stomp. This is according to the sighting report that can be found on, and this is real, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization website. This is a group that documents supposed Bigfoot findings, or sightings, I should say. So JM says that he and this Bigfoot apparently were staring at each other for like 30 seconds, but he said it felt like forever before the Bigfoot turned and walked off. He also said in his report, "I'm a police officer and had no clue what to make of it. At this point, as much as I didn't want to admit it, I'm convinced it was a Bigfoot." These sightings, whether it's Bigfoot or aliens or whatever other legend type creatures, the ones where the person who supposedly saw the creature, when they say stuff like, "I didn't want to say that this was what it was," the ones that are like, before this day, I thought this was crazy and this wasn't real. The ones that are hesitant like that, I lead a little bit more credence to than, people who are just excitedly saying they saw something. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that this is true, but it just makes me feel like, okay, this person's like hesitant. They don't really want to talk about it or don't really want to admit what they saw. I just find that more interesting. Again, not saying it's true. I just find those people who have those types of sightings, I think that's just more interesting. So the Bigfoot Field Research Organization looked into the claim like they do all Bigfoot claims. And for some background, by the way, this organization has actually been around since 1995. It's a worldwide network of researchers dedicated to investigating Bigfoot sightings and researching the animal, or whatever a Bigfoot is, if it is real. And so they investigated it, and a researcher followed up with this person, JM, and found his reported sighting to be credible. So whatever, take that for whatever that means. So very interesting story. I don't necessarily believe in Bigfoot, but who knows what might have been out there he may have seen. It might be a more normal explanation if he actually did see something at all. Definitely too big to be one of the monkeys that escaped from the research facility. That's for sure. But in any event, hey, why not? We've got monkeys on the loose. We've got emus on the loose. Why not a Bigfoot as well? What the hell, right? Would anything surprise you at this point? Not just in South Carolina, but in this country in the year 2024? No, nothing at this point would really surprise me. In South Carolina, by the way, like several other states over the years, has had many sightings of Bigfoot, big feet. I don't know what the plural Bigfoot is. Bigfoots. There have been dozens of Bigfoot sightings in South Carolina, specifically throughout the years, including 4 in Horry County, which is actually where the annual South Carolina Bigfoot Festival takes place each fall. I think I did talk about the festival on a previous podcast this year, just because I had no idea this festival existed in South Carolina. So why not? Maybe there's a Bigfoot out there. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Quick programming note, as I mentioned, I am traveling, however, still planning on recording as normal, just be doing it from Connecticut instead of here in Charleston. There could, however, be some disruptions. An episode might be skipped or might come out on a different day because of whatever, plans with my family, things come up. Also, with the holidays, that might make things a little wonky next week, not necessarily this week as much. So to ensure that you don't miss any shows, of course, just subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. And when there's a new show, whether it's expected on its normal date and time, or if it's random, you'll certainly see it. I hope you have a great rest of your week. If you need plans, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar. You can see what's coming up. You can also just knock that calendar off and go to the main website and see the latest news and happenings around town. I'll be back with you on Wednesday. Looks like that's going to be an interview episode. It's going to be a good one. Definitely looking forward to it, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And like I said, just be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any shows in case there's any change to the schedule during the holidays. Looking forward to being back with you, but until then, good night and good luck.